everybody. Hello grade 1-2s. I hope you had another wonderful week. Today we are going to start with a quick activity. I want you to close your eyes with me and listen very carefully. I'm going to play some sounds and I want you to think about what those sounds might be. Ready? Listen close. Good listening. What did you hear? So I want you to hold on to those thoughts and we'll come back to them during the story. So our story today comes from the book of Acts. It's our very last story about Paul's missionary adventures. I'm going to get our learning map so we can do a quick review. So you may remember that we have a very big learning map that it doesn't even fit on screen. Paul was a very busy traveler. I'm going to fold this up so we can take a closer look. So first up on our map, we have a place called Antioch. Do you remember what happened at Antioch? That's right. Paul and his friend Barnabas were sent out on their missionary journey from Antioch. So then our story took us to a place called Philippi. Do you remember what happened in Philippi? That's right. A woman named Lydia believed in Jesus. And then, last week, we learned about a place called Corinth. What happened in Corinth? That's right, you can see Paul made tents with Priscilla and Aquila and shared the gospel that way. And then they took a boat to a place called Ephesus, where Priscilla and Aquila met a person named Apollos, who also liked to tell people about Jesus. And so our story today is going to be right here, because Paul was on his way to all the way up here to a place called Rome. That's where he was going. But our story is about this picture right here. Paul told people everywhere the good news about Jesus. Lots of people listened and believed, but some people didn't believe. They didn't like hearing about Jesus. So they got Paul in trouble. They accused him of taking a stranger into the temple and making it dirty. That was a very serious crime. If Paul were to be found guilty, he could have been put to death. So Paul decided to go to the highest judge of all, Caesar. But to get to Rome, where Caesar lived, Paul had to take a long journey on a ship. So Rome, where Caesar lived, is the place I showed you on the map. So Paul boarded a ship with many other prisoners. Shortly after the ship left, a terrible, terrible storm struck. Do you remember? Those were the sounds that we heard at the start of the video. The sounds of a storm. So the boat would shoot up a crest of one wave and crash down to the bottom of the next wave. As the boat pitched through the stormy sea, the prisoners rolled from one side of the boat to the other. Let's roll side to side too, just like this. Whoa! 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 The sailors were so afraid, so they tied ropes around the ship to keep it from breaking apart. The storm continued for days and days. To see what that felt like, I want you to stand up, make sure that the area around you is clear, and spin around for a minute. Spin, 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 spin. Be careful. Don't get too dizzy. Don't crash into anything. But you can spin around to know what that might have felt like. During the storm, an angel came to Paul and told him that everyone would make it to land safely. So Paul told everyone that they didn't need to be afraid. He trusted that God would keep them all safe. 14 days after the storm started, that's 2 weeks, the sailors became even more frightened. They decided to try to escape in the lifeboat and leave the prisoners to die when the ship sank. But Paul told them not to escape, and the men obeyed. Then Paul told everyone to have something to eat so they could stay alive. He took some bread, thanked God for it, then everyone ate. Soon the sailors saw land. Everyone got excited, hoping they'd be safe and dry. But the ship got stuck on a sandbar, so that's when the bottom of the ship gets stuck in the sand so it can't move anymore. The ship got stuck on a sandbar and they couldn't make it to land. So the prisoners, sailors, and guards swam to the island or floated there on pieces of wood. Just like the angel said, everyone made it safely. So let's answer some questions. First one, how do you think the people felt on the ship during the storm? Next question, how did God keep Paul safe? Next one, what was the good news that Paul told the men during the storm? And do you think the storm got in the way of Paul telling the good news about Jesus? So Paul told the people on the ship that God would keep them from being hurt and that they would make it to land and not die. He told everyone on the ship about God and about Jesus. So as we think about all the stories we've learned about Paul, what do you think is the most important thing that Paul did during his life? That's right, he told people about Jesus. He went far from his home to do that, but we can do that close to our home too. Maybe we have people in our family that don't know about Jesus, or maybe we have friends that don't know about Jesus. There are lots of people that need to hear about Jesus. And why do we want people to know about Jesus? I want you to think about that this week. So you might remember last week we learned a song called The Good News, and we will sing that song again. I'll play the clip from last week, but there's one more verse to add to this song that I'm going to sing for you today. So you'll hear it when it comes up in the song. God wants us all to share the news, share the news, share the news. God wants us all to share the news, all the good news about Jesus. Paul was sent out to tell the world, tell the world, tell the world. Paul was sent out to tell the world all the good news about Jesus. Lydia heard and she believed, she believed, she believed. Lydia heard and she believed all the good news about Jesus. Priscilla and Aquila knew, yes they knew, yes they knew. Priscilla and Aquila knew all the good news about Jesus. In a stormy sea, Paul shared the news, shared the news, shared the news. In a stormy sea, Paul shared the news, all the good news about Jesus. Now you and I can tell the world, tell the world, tell the world. Now you and I can tell the world all the good news about Jesus. So our activity this week, we don't really have a craft because I'm not sure what all of you have at home, but you can draw a picture of a storm or anything like that. It'll also be on our Today I Learned. But because the weather is getting nicer, it could be fun to see if you could make a storm. So you can take a bucket and fill it with water and take it outside, or you can try this in a sink or bathtub, just make sure you have your parents' permission. And once you have the water, you can try to make a storm by stirring it and making a whirlpool. You can blow on a straw in the water and it'll create little waves. If you have a toy boat or anything that floats in water, you can see how the water affects it. So try making a storm, experiment a little. And so our Today I Learned looks like this. We have where the story is found in the Bible, and it's Acts chapter 27, verses 13 to 44. And our memory verse is our last week for this memory verse. It is, therefore go and make disciples of all nations. And that verse just means go and tell people about Jesus. And it's found in Matthew chapter 28, verse 19a. And this is our very last lesson in this book, so next week we will be starting in a different part of the Bible. All right, everyone, thanks for joining us today, and we will see you soon.